Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. On today's episode, we've got a real exciting one for you guys. Sunday afternoon, what better time to spend than in the garage? We have the E46 M3 sitting here, being lovely as it always does. And we have the F82 M4, the new stepchild, as you may call it. In front of the M4, we've got the box sitting there. Beautiful box, may I add. This is the KW H.A.S kit, the height adjustable spring kit. So we are going to be putting that on the M4 today. We're going to be lowering this bad boy because it sits like a Ford Explorer at your kid's soccer game. Not cool. We're trying to do similar to what we did with the E46, go for that static look. So that's what we're going to be doing with the M4. A little bit about the job. We're going to be doing the front end of the car first, corner by corner. Then we're going to move on to the back. Not a very difficult job on this car. I rate it like a 4.5 out of 10 on the difficult. How difficult is this job scale? So yeah, follow along. We're going to get her done. Another thing I would suggest, or advise you should do, you could do, very cheap investment. I've been using these for a long time on my BMWs. Boom, boom. These go into the bottom plastic jacking points of your car. So I find over time, not so much when you're putting them on the hoist, usually a nice flat pad go on there, it doesn't really squish the plastic squares that slip into the rocker panel where you jack your car up from. But if you're constantly using a floor jack, I find a lot of times those things get mangled up. Sometimes they're even completely missing. Seen that. So I do suggest you get yourself a set of these. They come in 4. I mean, really one set will do 2 cars or as many cars as you really want to do it with, unless you're jacking up multiple cars at once. This just slips into the bottom of that square. Now you got a nice circular jacking surface for your jack. Nice rubber, won't damage anything. Super cool, super easy. So yeah, without further ado, let's get crack-a-lackin'. Let's roll the L Mac Tools green jack over here and get the wheels off this bad boy. And let's get rocking. First things first, we're gonna go ahead and remove this from the holder here, as you can see. And we're gonna remove this plug. That plugs in just like this, and if you look on the inside, you're just going to take this tab right there and push that down like that. 16 millimeter for the sway bar link nut, and it's a T30 for the inside stud. So you're just going to want to hold that inside stud while removing the nut, and make sure the suspension is at a position where the sway bar link simply slides out and it's not under tension, as we just did. You're going to want to unplug this EDC connector right here. That's for the electronic dampener control. Now, this end is going to plug into the top of the strut. So be very, very, very careful pulling this out. It's just a straight pull off of the strut. You can see it's got 2 little square tabs that go in there. Just be very careful. You don't want to break that. And on the other end is this guy, which plugs into here. If you really want, you could actually, in theory, leave this together and just simply move this out of the way. We're gonna go back downstairs now. All right, guys, so lower strut bolt, 16 millimeter nut and bolt side. You're gonna need a little something to spread the knuckle out like you do on all Euro cars. I'll show you here. Just grab the holder. So you are going to need a little something to spread this. I literally spread it by hand while pulling the strut out. This car has like virtually no miles, so it's never even seen rain in my possession. So we're just going to use a Scotch pad, scuff that up a little bit, no big deal. Make sure your lines, as you can see, everything is nice and loose. There's no stress on anything, so very crucial. Now, as far as the strut itself goes, the KW H.A.S kit actually reuses the factory struts. The advantage of this is you are able to retain the factory EDC, so you're still able to have the Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus suspension settings. So we opted to leave the top strut mount in the car, which is a nice way to do that. You don't need to remove the carbon brace this way. So essentially, you've got your bump stop, your spring, and the dust shield. So the strut will come out in this orientation, like so. So we just pulled all this off like this. We are going to reuse this little plastic collar here. So I've seen some people that install this H.A.S kit ditch this collar, but you know what? I like to leave things as original as possible, so you are able to reuse this. The KWS or KW instructions do not tell you that you do have to trim the bottom of this here. So you do have to trim this lip off in order for it to fit through on the KW stuff. So we're going to remove that. Then we are going to remove our EDC sensor with the E-Torx here. And then we are going to have to bang the perch off of here. So we're going to be replacing this spring perch with the KW perch. But before we do that, it's very, very important that you mark this. So we're going to take a paint marker all the way around, mark this, and we're going to mark a line exactly where the actual sway bar link attaches to as well. Now take note of the bevel side versus the flat side for the sway bar as well. All right, guys, so as you can see, we've got the perch marked all the way around. Now, if you take a look at your new KW perch, you will see right here, should be able to see there, it's actually stamped right. So you can't really mess that up. What you're gonna do now is take a hammer. Yeah, it sounds barbaric, but that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take a hammer and knock this perch off the strut up. And then what we're gonna do is use this perch to help us pound on the new one. And you want the new one to line up exactly the way that this one did. And you gotta be very careful that your sway bar link bracket is exactly parallel with your mark. The purple collar here, so we can show you. Okay, now with the collar removed, we've got our caliper zeroed. What we want to do is check the distance from the top of the collar here to the top of the strut, which should have 55 millimeters plus or minus 2 millimeters. So that means 53 to 57. Right. So we're sitting at 54.8, essentially 55, which is the ideal specification. So we are right on target. We're going to show you how we got this sleeve pressed on. We did try hammering it on using the old perch. I saw somebody else do that on one of the forums. Literally take the old perch, flip it around, put it on top of here and try and hammer this down. That did work, but the last 3/4 of an inch, I was not able to get this down any further. So I brought it to the shop and I used the press. I'll show you how I use the press. It made it super easy, very simple. I would suggest access to a press. I'm gonna do the second one with the press and it really is much, much easier. Saves you a lot of stress. Now, the little collar that some guys throw out, we're not gonna throw that out. We trimmed it with some side cutters and then we just used a little die grinder wheel to smooth that edge out nice and smooth. Looks great. That's gonna basically sit right here, but it's gonna obviously get pounded on a little bit more, but gives you an idea. and the collar can go back on. So we'll take you over to the press, we'll do the other one, and we'll show you what's up. All right, so we've got the strut in the press. We're gonna use the sway bar ear as well as the EDC sensor ear, which are perfectly level as our anchor points. And make sure when you're doing this, you don't press on this bottom little nipple, let's call it, probably where the valving is. So we found this nice little adapter. It's actually a hoist pad. Fits nice and perfect with the actual diameter of the strut, and it's got a nice wide face. So that's what we're going to use. That's what we used on the other one. We put a little bit of grease on the inside of the sleeve, and we also used the buff wheel just super lightly just to take off any dirt, even though this car has virtually no miles. It's got about 10,000 miles on it, so everything came off beautifully. We've got our marks of our old perch, and this should be the depth of the new perch, and as well as you can see, we've got 2 lines of where our tab should basically line up. So let's get to pressing, and I'll show you once we're done. We'll confirm the measurements against the previously done one. All right, guys, so this is what your strut should look like assembled. Very nice pieces. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and tap this dust collar, dust shield, I believe they call this, down. After that, we're gonna fit our spring on here. Sorry, I lied. What we're gonna do is tap this down. We're gonna put our new bump stop on. We're gonna use a little bit of glass cleaner to lube up the bump stop. Then we're gonna slide our spring on, and then we're gonna slide on our factory dust boot. So before we do that, we're gonna remove the factory bump stop from the dust boot. We're gonna unfold this guy here, here, and here. I'm gonna put that off to the side. And we could just use a little hammer for the dust shield. Once it changes tone like that, you'll know that you're seated all the way. Beautiful. So, this is the upside, this is the downside. I'm going to spray a little bit of glass cleaner in here just to work as a lubricant. It's going to go in here like so. There we go. I'm going to grab our spring. Now, if you notice, the spring has a flat side here and a curved side. So the flat side is going to go against our adjuster sleeve. And now you can see why we needed to trim this ring. Now, remember, I took it to the shop. I made it nice and neat because I see some people just use side cutters and leave the edges all jagged. But this is a nice car. This is my baby. I like to do things properly. So very nice, very nice. I'm gonna put our spring on now, just like this. See how the flat side sits against the flat side of the collar. Okay. And now our dust boot simply slides on, and the dust boot is going to go over this edge of the dust shield, and that's how it is supported on the bottom side. So we'll get that on. We're gonna go over to the knuckle on the car. We're gonna clean it up a little bit. Just a little bit of 240 grit sandpaper works great. Light layer of grease, white lithium grease, whatever you really got. Anti-seize works too. Help it slide in there. And yeah. All right, guys, so make sure your locating tab here slides through the slot on the knuckle. So we've knuckle lubricated a little bit with just some regular grease. We're gonna slide this in, and make sure when you're putting this in that this bottoms out in the knuckle. You need that as low as it can go. And if you look at the knuckle is tapered. So it will hit the bottom. There will be a point where it can't go anymore. So that's what you wanna do. We're gonna do that first. Then we're going to tilt the knuckle into the car. And then we're gonna jack up the control arm. We've got a piece of wood on the jack so we don't damage the control arm at all. We're gonna jack it up and we're gonna put it up into the top hat. So you may need to spread your knuckle a little bit just to get it to slide all the way in. Same way as you did when you removed it. So that's in, and that appears to have bottomed out, which is what we want. So I'm just using this little pry bar literally by hand, same what I did when I was removing it. That is definitely the bottom. So now what we're going to do is simply tilt this towards the vehicle. Be mindful of the fender. It should clear your wheel well, or wheel liner, I should say, as well. So once we've got that kind of lined up with the top hat and where we need to be, which is right about there, we're going to pump this jack. And just guide it into that into the top hat. You may need to go on top, just check. All right, so we're in the top hat. We're gonna leave the jack where it is. And first things first is we're gonna put our bottom through bolt, our 16mm bolt and nut. Now make sure you put this in the correct way. So the bolt head was facing the front of the vehicle. If you're not sure, what I like to do when I take things apart is I like to leave them on the ground the way that they came out. So if you're not sure the direction, well, you can refer to that. And also when you're doing this, you're gonna make sure that your little bracket that holds the brake line and the wheel speed sensor goes through the knuckle slot and is held by the bolt. So we're gonna do that now. And then We'll tighten up the top. We'll tighten up the sway bar link. We're going to torque everything to spec. We've got our digital torque wrenches here. We'll be back in a sec. All right, guys, so making our way to the back. The back's going to consist of our spring, primary spring, a helper spring. This is the sleeve that's going to sit between the small spring and the main spring. This little piece here is going to sit on the bottom control arm and replace the rubber isolator that is currently there. And for the top, we've got our adjuster, as per usual, with the top nub, as you can see right here, is going to sit up into the chassis of the car. So in a completed assembly, it's going to look like this. So one thing you want to note is that the end of the small spring and the end of the big spring are 180 degrees out. So if you want, you can even make a mark here with a Sharpie, same on the other side, so that when you're putting it together, if it happens to move around, you'll easily be able to see that. There is one more piece for the rear, and it is simply a bump stop for the shock absorber. So we're gonna basically undo the shock first, 18 millimeter bolt, 18 millimeter nut. And then we're going to unbolt the control arm from the chassis of the car. There's two spots. You can unbolt it from the chassis side or the knuckle side, which is the alignment bolt. If you're if you're removing it from the alignment bolt, make sure that you put a mark there so that your car is at least super close to the factory alignment or whatever alignment it was. We're going to remove it from the chassis side. We're going to have a jack underneath it just to hold it because the spring is going to have some tension on it. And yeah, let's get going. So the bump stop is going to be easy. Once we get the shock absorber out, we're just going to zip the nut off, zip the top mount off, replace the bump stop, insert it into the dust boot the way the factory one is, and then continue on. Now that we've got the control arm unbolted from the subframe and the chassis in the back here, we're going to slowly let down our jack. The spring is going to hold pressure on all of this, so you just want to be careful. Shock is unbolted. There's no level sensor for the headlights on the right rear, but on the left rear there is, so just be mindful of that. All right, guys, so as previously stated, you are going to be replacing the bump stop on the factory shock. So you are going to shock, you are going to separate the top mount, and you are going to replace the bump stop. The rest of the shock is going to stay exactly the same. You're going to put it back up. Make sure the top holder piece for the threaded collar sits properly in the chassis hole. There's a hole in the chassis. You'll see it's got a rounded nub that just basically pushes right up into the chassis. So you want to make sure that is sitting properly, and you can tell it's sitting properly if this is flush all the way around. Now, if you look at our coilover right now, we've got it set to the maximum low setting. You're going to use the supplied wrenches that come with the KW kit to adjust the height accordingly, however you want it. And as I previously mentioned, as you can see, the helper spring down there, you want to make sure that the helper spring end and the primary spring end are 180 degrees apart. So it's easy to do if you mark one of them when you're putting it together. And same with the bottom. You just want to make sure that that bottom cup is, the bottom rubber isolator is properly sitting in the lower control arm there. So that's it for the rear. The rear is pretty simple. We're going to move over to the front and show you how to adjust the front and what that looks like assembled. All right, so for the front, you've got a locking pin right here. It's a number 3 hex bit. So make sure that this is locked or unlocked if you're doing your adjustment. So thread this out, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. And again, using your supplied wrenches, this is how you're going to spin your collar. As you can also see with the front, we've got it on the maximum low setting. And as we previously mentioned, the flat edge of the spring is the edge that is going to be against your purple collar. So as you can see, our dust boots are properly installed. Everything looks good. And yeah, it's pretty nice, simple setup. If you leave that upper top hat in, makes the job super simple. Make sure your EDC wire is properly clipped into the holder. And as always, make sure everything is torqued to spec. That's it. Okay guys, car's on the ground. Looks incredible. Something to note, the suspension will settle after 5 to 8 days, and this is also on the max low setting, so I've got the collars spun all the way down. I mean, it looks wicked. That's how the car should have came from factory. Both sides look exactly the same. We were very careful to slide those collars in when we were on the press to the exact same measurement. So they're probably, if not the exact same, within 0.1 millimeter. So very important to note that measurement, and also very important to note that your strut is slid down all the way into the knuckle correctly, because I've seen some people put it in and not bottom that strut out. So make sure you spread it a little bit to help you aid in getting it all the way down. There it is, guys, there it is. Hope this video was helpful. If this video did help you out on installing this kit, if you could like and subscribe to my channel, that would be just splendid. And if you don't want to do that, just drop me a comment in the drop section below. If you have any questions I could help answer, I would be more than happy to do so. Hopefully your car is sitting a little bit better, as mine definitely is. And yeah, this was a cool little project. Again, not too difficult to install, super popular with the F8X guys. KW H.A.S kits available for a lot of different platforms, but yeah, overall I'd rate the product 10 out of 10. Didn't run into any real big issues. I do suggest, like we showed in the video, if you have access to a shop press for the front spring purchase, this will help you a lot. I know a lot of guys are pounding those things on. I really don't know how you pounded on that last half-inch, quarter-inch, because I had a hell of a time. I would just skip that altogether, bring it over to the press, mark your lines like I did, make sure you have your dial indicator caliper there, and you can really dial in that 53 to 57. Like we showed earlier, we got ours dialed in 55 right on the nose. And yeah, easy to adjust the kit. Overall, pretty simple. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Check me out on the next video, and have a great day.